What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to be a part of the event and excited to hang out with you. You're in the right place if you're looking for how to create an unstoppable content strategy. And if you can get this right, you're going to unlock growth not only just for your company and your team, but also for your own career. And the goal of today is to create a content strategy that your competitors envy and your audience loves. And so we're going to walk through that a bit today. First, we're going to cover the real purpose of your content. Next, we're going to dive into the content strategy flywheel. And then lastly, we're going to get really tactical. And this is where you get your notebook out. And we're going to cover 4 critical steps for creating an unstoppable content engine. So before we get into it, maybe we should start thinking about what is the goal of your content strategy today? If you're feeling brave, go ahead and put it into the chat now. What is the goal for your content strategy at your company? If you're not in marketing or your company and you're joining, maybe if you have a personal content strategy, you can put it in there. But what's the goal? Maybe it's for brand awareness, driving leads, supporting sales, whatever it is, go ahead and punch it in there. And this is a critical question to be able to answer, because if you're not clear on your goals and your strategy, then it becomes impossible to create content that your audience loves. And that's really important because when readers are let down, when they trade their email address for a lousy ebook, they say, screw it. And you've probably been there. Maybe you've clicked onto a blog with a great header, read a couple paragraphs only to find that it's fluff and not very helpful. Maybe you clicked on a really enticing listicle, right? 7 ways to do this thing, only for number 1 or number 2 to say, buy our software, right? And we don't want to do that, right? When we do that, as creators, as marketers, it lets down our audience. They rush to exit out of the screen or continue scrolling on, which is equivalent to essentially, ripping up the content and going elsewhere. But here's the thing. Your reader isn't just ripping up your content in those moments. They're tearing up your reputation. And so you got to keep in mind, every marketing touch counts, because our last marketing touch could be our last marketing touch, meaning the one that most previous could be our final if we don't make it count. And so let's get back to that question. Why does our content exist, or what's the number one goal? And content, especially top of funnel stuff, which we're going to talk mostly about today, it doesn't exist to create brand awareness, right? Brand awareness is a part of it, but effectively brand awareness is kind of like a billboard or an ad, right? I can throw my logo and maybe my tagline in front of you, but we want to go deeper than that. So why bother creating content? Why invest the time, resources, and headcount required for this specialized marketing function? The goal is to build trust at scale. This is why top of funnel content is so critical. We'll get into that a little bit more. But we really think about it. If our goal is to go beyond knowing we exist, what we really want to do is to let folks know, the right people know we exist. We want them to like us, and we want them to trust us. And it happens typically in that order, right? And if you can crack this code, you're going to unlock a lot of growth for your company. You're going to get more inbound to fuel new business acquisition. You'll increase your retention because clients trust your expertise. And it'll also open up doors for upsell and cross-sell opportunities because, again, they're familiar with you, your company, your point of view, and they're going to want to do more business with you. And so this is what I'm always talking about, building trust at scale. And again, we're talking at top of funnel, but it applies even to middle funnel and bottom funnel content, right? We want to continue to build that trust and to position ourselves as an expert. Now, when you think about the funnel, we often do top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel. The truth is that doesn't really exist, right? It doesn't really exist. No one thinks, as you're consuming content, oh, I'm in a middle funnel phase right now. And really what happens is you find out that someone exists, that you know them, you like them, and you trust them. And it's a very fluid motion. A few years ago, when I got started in my marketing career, I didn't have any traditional marketing strategies or tactics to rely on. I was a sales guy. I knew how to hit quota. I knew how to communicate, and I knew how to sell, but I didn't really know how to build a system or a process for building trust at scale. I was usually doing it one-to-one or one-to-few conversations. And so for better or for worse, I didn't have any context on how things should be done. But I did understand from having sold that people buy from companies that they like and they trust. And the most effective way to do that at scale is to create high quality, highly relevant content. The more content they engage with, the more likely they are to come inbound to do more business with us, as I mentioned a little while ago. And really what you want to do is to crack into word of mouth marketing and get your market to talk about you. It isn't enough for folks to say that they know us. We want them to love us via our content. But I didn't know how. I didn't know what to measure. I didn't know what inputs were needed. And I didn't have the confidence to defend my plan to executives, which is key if you want to get resources and headcount. And so what we did was I just very slowly but intentionally chipped away at this process. Blog by blog, channel by channel, break by break, started to build this content engine. And so recently I sat down and I really just mapped it all out. I threw everything down that I knew, and I was trying to answer the number one question that I get when talking to marketers, which is, how do I build a content strategy? What is it exactly? And so I realized I'd kind of created a flywheel. It's kind of similar to HubSpot's. It's a little bit like a V2, but it's my own version on it. And again, specifically for this things we've been talking about in that top of funnel thought leadership approach. And here's the first draft. Extremely messy, not very pretty. If you want, you can try to zoom in and see it. But ultimately what we're trying to do is move from plan to production to observing what's working. And the benefit of this is, as marketers, we want a plan that we can defend, give us confidence, one that gives us clarity for decision making, and one that gives us predictable outputs. So the more I refine these ideas, and with the help of a designer, which I clearly am not, it became a more simplified version that we're going to cover today. So here's the content strategy flywheel. I'm using it today at my new gig at Clari, and I'm going to continue to use it throughout my career, surely iterating along the way. So there's 4 key stages, and we'll go over them briefly. So plan, that's where you start. That's creating your strategy. The goal isn't just to dive right into creating content, though that is a very important part. You want to be really intentional and understand the what and the why behind all of your decision making. Number 2 is unlock. This is where you unlock your niche knowledge. We'll dive into that a lot today. Third is produce. You kind of consider this your typical content marketing. It's executing your channel strategy, creating and distributing content. And the last one is observe. This is where you collect audience feedback and iterate, and we'll get into that as well. Now, after observe is where you can have a trail off here, and that's where you start to hit your KPIs, your goals, and then you go back into planning and you start to spin this wheel. Once you catch, content market fit, this wheel starts to increase in velocity, it moves faster, and it gets larger. And it kind of starts to run itself in a way. Now, if you're unfamiliar with content market fit, it's really simple. It's effectively you're creating the right content for the right audience on the right channel at the right time. Or you're kind of serving them up the exact dish that they want. Think about when you go to your favorite restaurant and you know exactly what you want and why, except you're the cook at the diner and your audience is the patron. And you want to just keep serving them up exactly what they want. And sometimes new dishes they didn't know they needed. We'll get into that. Okay. We don't have time in our session today to go through every single step of each of these stages because plan has a few steps, while others are a little bit, not as deep. And so what we're going to do is cover the 4 that are most important and often most overlooked for people who are creating content. Okay, are you ready? Let's dive into it. First, we're going to start with plan at the very top. We're going to spend about 3-ish minutes on each of these. So we're going to go pretty quickly here, but you'll get the recording in the deck after in case you want to go back or do a little bit of thinking from some of the prompts. So always start with plan. Strategy starts with the planning of what is possible. And the first thing we're going to cover today is how to create your point of view. Now, your POV is your point of view, and this is absolutely critical for standing out. Now, I won't dive too deep into the attention economy, but you know that you absolutely need to grab and keep the attention of the right people. And the best way to do that is to create a differentiated or a unique point of view. And to compare it, think about for cell phone providers, especially for folks in the States, you've pretty much got 2 behemoths here. You've got Verizon and AT&T. And if you watch a lot of their commercials and their advertisements or their content, you usually see a lot of, Verizon's number one or AT&T's the best. But then they kind of just get into features and coverage area zones and pricing, and it's pretty forgettable, right? Those aren't the reasons why, you might pick one or the other, in terms of, might remember one or the other, when they're kind of just blasting this who's better, who's best, who's number one. Because at the end of the day, as a consumer, how do I really know that? How do I really know it's number one? And so the best way to win the battle for who's best is to, instead of trying to be better, aim for different. Different is better than better. You aren't trying to be number one. You're trying to be the only. And you don't have to be bold or controversial to be different and stand out. It's really just about creating a point of view that people remember. And usually it's wrapped around a narrative and a story. And so in a moment, we're going to walk through the questions that you need to create your point of view. But first, I want to start with this question. Who is your villain? Every company has a villain. It's a reason why they created the product or service, right? Something was wrong, something was broken, and they wanted to create a solution to that. Your villain is part of that problem and challenge that's preventing your hero from succeeding. So maybe it's Thanos here, but probably the villain is something less menacing and probably not connected to the Avengers. But think for a second, who's your villain? Because this is critical for your point of view. All right, let's get into the questions here. So to form your point of view, there's 5 questions that you should be able to answer. Now, these take a little bit of thinking, but if you can right now, if something jumps out, maybe you're listening to your gut or you already know these answers, feel free to jot it down. Now, if you know category creation and positioning, if you're a positioning pro, there's many more questions that you can answer, but these are the key 5 that I found to be very helpful. And often a lot of questions and uncertainty rely on answering these. So first, what problem do you see that nobody else does? That could be a new solution. Hey, people are going left. We should be going right. No one sees that. Or maybe it's the same destination, but the way that people are getting there is the wrong way. There's a better way. Number 2, who's your villain? Number 3, who's your hero? And number 4, what's your new desired state? What's the end goal? And number 5, what's preventing your hero from getting there? Now, the biggest mistake that I see B2B marketing teams make is they make the company the hero. But that's not true. Your hero is your audience, your ICP, the people that could potentially buy from you. You want to make them the hero, and your product is like the sidekick. You're there to help them overcome the villain, to get to that desired state, to overcome all those obstacles. But us as marketers and as the company, providing the product, we are not the hero. All right, we spent a lot of time in plan. We're going to jump over to unlock, and we're going to jump into how to unlock niche knowledge. Our goal as content marketers is to transform the expertise of people at our company and industry leaders into extremely valuable content. And sometimes this can come from our own insights, but usually it comes from SMEs or industry thought leaders, right? I had the good fortune of being a salesperson and then selling to salespeople. So I had a lot of this expertise. But as we expanded into new personas and as you expanded to new verticals, industries, and geos, your expertise might get stretched a little bit. So you need to find new SMEs and folks that can help fuel your content. All of these industry leaders, folks at your company, these internal experts have a vault of highly valuable and highly specialized information all in their head right now. And that's what I call niche knowledge. It's a collection of experiences, perspectives, and skills that are uniquely owned by that SME, subject matter expert. You might have heard of niching down from Christopher Lochhead and his band of legendary category pirates. This is kind of an extension in a way of putting this into practice. And so your goal is to unlock those insights and turn it into highly valuable content. And as you're starting to wade through all these different perspectives and ideas, kind of keep this in mind. Your expertise, the way you're going to be perceived, is measured by the depth of your experience and the quality of your insights. And so let's cover 3 ways that you can help generate content topics in case maybe you're new to a company, new to this industry, and you don't really, you're just kind of getting your bearings about you. Or if you just want, to kind of sharpen your skills here, even if you have a good content engine running. So we're going to get pretty tactical in a second here. And we'll start with relevance. Now, the first thing you want to do is make sure that the content topics that you're talking about relate back to the value prop of your company. So simple Venn diagram, because I'm a very simple man. On the right, you have your niche knowledge and experience. This is things that you want to talk about. And then you have on the left-hand side, what your audience cares about, what they want to hear. In the middle, you have highly relevant, highly valuable content. The reason this is such an important starting place is because there's a lot of topics your audience probably really cares about, but don't really have much to do with your solution. And you want to position yourself as an expert for the right things you can sell to. For example, Clari provides the revenue platform to help businesses run revenue effectively. If salespeople care about what to do with their commission checks and wealth management with all this new money they've made, we don't want to talk about that because we don't help with wealth management, right? So that would be an irrelevant topic for us. And so you can kind of see the idea here of using this, concept as a guide. And there's 3 ways that you can generate topics today. First, you can look at historical data. I'm new at Clari. This is something that I did immediately, but it can be done throughout your career at a company. Look at the past. Look at blogs, social posts, webinars, podcasts, anything and everything you're producing. Understand what's resonated the most and replicate your past wins by framing them around current trends and topical conversations for today. Number 2, social listening. We're going to dive into this in the next session a little bit more, here, but look across all of the different places where your prospects, your audience, and other thought leaders and industry leaders, what are they saying? What topics are getting a lot of engagement? Which topics are not getting engagement? What is the tone and the emotion of the person producing the content and the people in the comment section and how they're talking about it? This can give you a really good pulse, especially if you're, again, going into kind of new territory, to understand what trends are happening today, which ones make sense to ride, be a part of, and then once you kind of get a grasp of that, you can build up the confidence and knowledge to create your own trends, your own topics of conversation or thought leadership. And then the last one, ask your SME. If you really don't know, go to the internal person and take internal inventory by asking this quick formula. So I know it can be a little tough sometimes going to, your SME. Some people love to create content, love to help. Other people, it's kind of like pulling teeth a little bit. And so here's 2 statements that you can help them, prompt them with, and they'll start to answer. So first is skills. I know how to write a cold prospecting email. Then what you want to do is flip that into an outcome statement. So if you know how to write a cold prospecting email, the outcome is, I know how to generate sales pipeline. You want them to just kind of run through the gamut. You don't want to exhaust them, but you want to get a bunch of these and then go back and forth between skill and outcomes so you can have something that's tethered together and just kind of go through the list, right? Just get as much out of them as you can, and you're going to generate a lot of topics that persona cares about. Once you take that idea, writing a cold prospecting email, for example, then you want to move into curating insights. This is where you add depth to your content so it truly resonates and helps your audience and positions you as an expert. I'm going to go through this quickly because I'm a little bit over on time here. But what you can do is you can take this idea, move it to an insight, into a guide, a personal story, perspective, or an example with a breakdown. And I've got them all here. I'm gonna keep moving along, but basically what you can do is each of these examples are either something that can make its own piece of content, a guide, for example, or if it's not just a standalone, you can piece these together. You can put a personal story with a perspective, match it with a guide, and create something long form, or like I said, do standalone for shorter form, like things like social. So if you want, DM me after this. I'm happy to send you the deck. Each of those examples there that are highlighted will get you a little bit deeper in there in case you want to get in the weeds and see what it looks like out in the wild here. But effectively, you can really quickly go from what does your SME know What is the outcome of those? And how can you curate insights that are really valuable to your audience? All right, we're going to move on. We're going to skip produce. Produce is executing channel strategy, content marketing, things you know today. We're focusing on strategy, so we're going to skip it and move over to observe. Now, the final stage of observe is one of my favorites because it's how you can get an advantage over your competitors. And that's because most folks are limiting the audience signals that they look at to just dashboards. So when I think of audience signals, there's kind of two things. There's like the things you can track on a dashboard, right? How many people downloaded, how many people did this? It's usually really quantitative. But there's gold in the qualitative, anecdotal side of things as well. And so we're going to dive into this with an example, actually, to show you how you can use this. A few months back, I was promoting a podcast episode via email. And it was actually kind of new. We didn't really use email too much to distribute the podcast. And so it was a little bit of a test. And I wanted to see if this could, open up that channel for the podcast promo. And as we were finalizing the copy, I realized that the biggest objection someone would probably have from clicking from their inbox and their email over to a podcast was podcasts are really long, right? We're talking 20, 30, 40 minutes. And typically we had been kind of conditioning our audience to more short or mid-form content, which are things like blogs and cheat sheets. And so I was a little bit nervous about how it would be effective. And so at the final editing, I decided to throw in this the line there that's in red in PS, which is PS, if you're strapped for time, 8:29 to 10:05 is my favorite part of the episode. It's a game changer. My goal was to reduce the objection of the time commitment, right? And so with this simple line, I was able to cut about 90% of that potential objection, and also add a bunch of curiosity by promising it's a game changer, which it is. If you're going to promise it, has to be the best part, has to actually deliver. And so we threw this on there, sent the email, and it worked. The email performed. We hit our benchmarks, did a little bit better than our normal benchmark, actually, which was really cool. And so it answered the question of, can we use email to promote the podcast? But I didn't know if this PS line was part of that success or not. Now, of course, there's always a little bit of leap of faith we have to do in the creative game. But I was really curious, and there's really no way to know because there's no hyperlink or anything in it until I saw a comment on LinkedIn. I happen to know Jed, maybe you do too, but it's hard to read, but this little screenshot that he has is exactly what I had just showed you on that previous slide. So he's telling me this is a fire example, which I'm pretty sure is a good thing. Might be a little old for fire, but of content marketing. You can read the rest. He basically said, hey, this stood out and this worked. So here's our exact ICP validating a previous decision, saying that he liked it, he clicked it, and hey, he ended up reading the whole episode, which is fantastic. So now I know that this timestamp tactic, I can add that confidently into our playbook. I know it will reduce the objection and actually get people to read even more content or listen to more content. But keep in mind, audience feedback might not always be this direct and straightforward. So you want to learn to read between the lines. Don't take email replies and comments for granted. There's gold in there that you can really use to fuel, going back to the top of the flywheel, fuel your strategy and let you know that, hey, here's what your audience really wants. They'll lead you to the promised land. So keep a sharp eye for the feedback and these audience signals when they surface. Thanks for hanging out with me and the team today at Demand. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.